just because you're focusing on one segment doesn't mean that you're ruling out other segments in the future. It's just a stepping stone. It just gives you like you said, it could be early adopters, which means you can start to get data, you can start to get case studies, you can start to get referrals, you can be testing out the features on people who are less likely to leave because they're more loyal. There's lots of reasons to go after that market, even if it's not the biggest one.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes. I'm really excited about this episode because we're talking with Andrew Muir Wood, and we're talking about customer research and data validation, and how do you find the right fit? And we didn't call it this, but product market fit, and understanding where and how to find your ideal customers. And it's such a huge topic. We might have gone a little bit longer on this episode, but we didn't even barely crack the surface of what's possible and how to make it happen so you can actually scale up a company. Or if you're the investor, asking the right questions on the front end so that you know that the company that you're investing in has done their research. So really excited about this episode. Make sure you watch it all the way to the end. And as always, like, subscribe, and share. Take care.
Welcome to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions, the place to learn how to fund, scale, exit, and massively profit as an angel investor or entrepreneur. Brought to you by the Angel Investors Network. And now, here's your host, Jeff Barnes.
Welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes. I'm here today with Andrew. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Jeff. Really great to meet you and to be on the show.
Absolutely. Pleasure having you here. Always excited to have people from across the pond, as we say. So, Andrew, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because one of the things you do when it comes to research and I'd say customer avatar development and buyer personas and things like that is really near and dear to my heart because I talk a lot about marketing, not just a business, but also to get investors for businesses. And you work with a number of startups as well as larger companies. So why don't you tell folks a little bit more about yourself and your history?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you, so I run a research consultancy in London that works a lot with product leaders from a mixture of startups and larger corporates. And I'm also an advocate of Elios, which is a platform for researchers who are in the similar world. My background is actually design. So I studied product design, physical product design. And then I ended up doing a PhD, which involved lots of different types of research. And then I ended up in a strategy consultancy. Started an agency, a design agency with a friend. Realized I was maybe a bit young and green to be running an agency in my 20s. Then I went into a couple of startups and experienced the life as a senior employee in a couple of startups, understanding that the growing pains and the politics and fundraising and pitch decks, et cetera. And then I came out and started this other research consultancy, which I'm working on now. And I've worked with big famous brands like Condé Nast and Deliveroo, Mozilla, but also lots of startups that you won't have heard of because they're still early on in their kind of their growing stages.
So with your history, I'm curious, are you familiar with and do you do anything with design thinking?
Yeah, so design thinking is a kind of a thought process, a methodology, almost a kind of a trendy methodology that is particularly associated with IDEO and is a wave of business thinking where businesses are becoming a lot more customer centric and really trying to build research and customer research and insights about the customer into their thought process as they develop new products and services. And it also has the center of it is this idea of the double diamond. So it's about discovering divergent thinking and then narrowing down, coming up with ideas and then testing those ideas and evaluating them. And so my specialism is probably in the first side of that. So that kind of discovery part of the design thinking process is where I do most of my work. So you have a theme, a topic, you're working in an industry, or you have some unexplained behavior that we want to understand. Bring me in. I help you to research it, interview customers, observe them, work out what's going on, find out the context behind the numbers, and then make decisions about what to change, what to build, and what to focus on.
Awesome. So, yeah, I asked that question because one of the, it's presented as this amazing, silver bullet for a lot of companies. Like, you can just get this right, then you'll scale your business, and it'll be amazing. And the problem that I have with a lot of folks in business, obviously not just startups, it's definitely not just corporates, it's a lot of people, is that they have in their mind a solution before they even go and talk to a customer, before they even do their market research. Because they've had a single problem and they've said, oh, well, this problem's a problem for me, so it's got to be a problem for everybody else. And I find that creates this, this cognitive bias, right? This confirmation bias, if you will, with how they're going out about doing interviews and asking people and doing the research. And so from the very get-go, like straight out of the chute, all of their research goes down this path to validate their findings or their beliefs. And I'm curious what your thought is on all of that.
It's extremely common, and I think extremely natural as well. You come up with an idea and it's your baby, and you don't really want to hear anything that goes against your baby. And it is a lot of startups get into challenging waters when they're pushing, you can sometimes hear of tech push. They have a technology, they've got a cool, completely revolutionary technology, and then they're floundering around to try and find a use for it and trying to find a customer for it. And then maybe they're acquiring customers through heavy marketing or heavy discounts. But actually they never quite were solving a customer problem, a burning problem. And that's what you need for product market fit, which is, and when you have it, you know it because just it's flying off the shelves and you can't sell it fast enough. And which is an amazing feeling to get to. And there's not a wrong or a right answer. There are plenty of successful companies that have started that way and have found their way. Maybe they've got there eventually by pivoting. They've managed to get some traction, which has given them some learning, which they've eventually been able to, optimize for. But it does feel like it puts a lot of risk. If you start with an idea and you're just trying to validate it, there's a lot of risk that it might not succeed. Whereas I think really focusing on a problem at the start, particularly a problem that lots of people have or rich people have, and that they are prepared to spend money on solving that problem, and that you have some credibility in solving that problem, that feels like a much better starting point for building a business.
And so how do you go through that? Because I think it's an iterative process, right? Like, you're not going to go out there and ask a bunch of people if they have a problem, right? Like the death knell of any company is, well, would you buy this? Yeah, absolutely, I'd buy that. And they use that as validation. That's a great idea, right? And how many times have we seen that fail over and over and over again, right? I'm always reminded of the Simpsons episode like 2 decades ago when, the distant cousin comes in and says, "Oh, you have great ideas about cars. You should design my next car." And he wants a cup holder here, a cup holder there, 25 cup holders, and I need the horn's never accessible when I need it. I want to put the horn buttons all over the place, and all of a sudden he has this really terrible car, and it takes the entire company, right? So what's your process when you're talking with a company or a client? They say, "Hey, we have this idea. We think we have this idea, or we want to get to here." Like, what do you do with them, and what's the process you walk them through?
Let's assume, while I'm answering that question, let's assume we already have a bit of a theme, a bit of a vertical that we're in, right, rather than just looking completely openly. Really broad,
right? So use a recent case study if you want to, but give us some context.
Yeah, so I think that I have worked with companies that have got amazing technologies, and that aren't necessarily, they don't necessarily think they have a specific vertical in mind, but they have some ideas. So a good starting point is to do some desk research or some expert research to try to narrow down so that you are not then scanning every single industry or vertical after that point. So whatever you can do to get it down to 2 or 3, and then it's about talking to people within that industry. And the questions you're asking those people are definitely not, would you buy my thing? It's much more about understanding the problem, how they're doing things currently. Where are the main, what's slowing them down from doing, having the output that they want to have. Whether that's something that's costing them lots of money, taking them lots of time, or it's somehow creating some kind of stress. You need to look for these evidence of these problems. And then also looking for people who are already trying to fix those problems. A really good signal is if someone has, created something out of a spreadsheet and they've got someone in India that's like doing some manual data entry, and they've got someone here. These are really good signals that there's a problem. They've already started allocating money towards it, but they don't have a perfect solution. And if they had something that was much more slick and much more secure, then that would be, where they would spend their money. Those are all really great signals that are music to my ears in a B2B
I love that
context.
because, just to pause you there, because a lot of innovators, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups, they think that they have to go after this blue ocean strategy and create something that no one's ever heard of and no one's ever done before and so on. And how many graveyards are filled with ideas, right? We talk about the ideas are worth a dime a dozen. I think that's, it's more true today than it ever has been, because people have all these amazing ideas of what to do, but there's no validation that anyone else really cares that much. It cares enough to pay money for it. Let's put it that way, right? And so what you just said is we want to find those people that are already trying to solve a specific pain point, a specific problem that they're having in their lives and their business and whatever. And they're already trying to solve it in some way, but maybe they don't have the innovative genius, the technology background, the wherewithal to build a cohesive solution that makes life really easy for them. So instead, they're doing all these workarounds, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really important point that I don't want people to miss.
Absolutely. It's the key point that you said, that we both said, was about the willingness to spend money on it. It's not enough that they have a problem. There are lots of pain points that exist in the world that are shared by many, many people, but they're actually not willing to spend money on solving that. And so they will continue to complain about it. Maybe they'll use whatever they have available to them, often it's spreadsheets, to fix that thing. Or, it might be a junior person in the company who is cheap. And so there's just no need to bring in a whole new solution. And so you really need to get that willingness to pay. And the earlier that we're able to have that, gather that evidence and have that conversation about money, the sooner you have more certainty about whether or not there's actually a market for your product.
Before continuing, please subscribe and share this video to help us reach more people and stay notified of our latest releases. Now, let's continue watching and learning.
So let's take this a step further, which is we're going to assume that we're looking at a company from the outside looking in as a potential investor in a company. And we're listening to somebody give us a pitch. And they give us this pitch about this amazing product, this amazing idea, and all of these different things that they think are going to make this company worth $1 billion. Like the unicorn, I've actually been pitched a Pegasus still now. People think their company's going to be worth $1 trillion. Like, come on. We only have a handful of those, and it took them a long time to get there. Like, let's be realistic here. But everybody thinks they have a unicorn opportunity. And the challenge that a lot of would-be investors have is that when they're getting pitched, they may not know enough about the market. They may not know enough about the person or about the company and things like that. So what are some questions or some ways that somebody who is unfamiliar with that specific company, and we can use any type, like, let's just say, for example, we're going after Tesla, and we were one of the early people that Elon Musk approached and said, hey, I'm going to fix this thing. What are some questions you think would be good for somebody who is not in that innovative, iterative process to figure out the problem and the solution? They should be asking of the entrepreneur, the person who's pitching them, to get a sense of whether there's really a problem and a market there or not.
Yeah, I mean,
I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Thanks for picking Tesla as the example. It's an enormously challenging example, but I'll give you some principles and then we can talk about Tesla in a minute. So if the company already has customers, it's a bit easier for the investor to say, A, how much are they spending? And B, can I speak to your customers and, get it from the horse's mouth? And also, if it's some kind of subscription, are they renewing? Are they expanding? Or are they churning? And how many have expanded? How many have churned? So it's very easy once you have that sales data, because you can...
Okay, so I have to pause you right there, because what you just said, it hits right on a really, really important point for anybody who's raising capital, which is proof and traction, right? It's so much easier. And we talk to investors about this and funds, and everybody likes to be the last 10% into a deal, not the first 10%, right? So when you can show traction, and you can show proof, and you can get validation from existing customers who are buying it. And what you just said, really want people to understand this, is that they're not churning. Okay. And this is a big issue that I think startups, founders, anybody who's running a subscription-based, a membership-based, an association, a SaaS, if they're not looking at those metrics to validate their problem and their customer life cycle and their customer journey and all that, that they're missing out in a big way. And so I think just even asking those questions, like, what's your churn, right? What's your customer acquisition cost? What's your customer lifetime value? How long did they stay with you?
Yeah.
Those questions in and of themselves are going to really paint a great picture for how valid your idea is, right?
Absolutely. And I think then if they do have these existing customers, then and maybe they do have this data on churn and retention and expansion, et cetera, then the next question is, who is your ideal customer?
Right.
And who is your best customer? And some startups can answer it really well. That's a good sign. If they can't answer, if they say our product is for everyone, anyone in this industry,
the other way, right?
Anyone in this industry can use our thing, our widget, then that means they haven't done any analysis of their customers.
Right.
Usually what you'll see is you have some signals of what is a good customer. That's because they stuck around, then they expanded, or they referred, they were happy to give a testimonial case study. There's all of these indications, not all of them financial, which indicate that they're a good customer. And then you have the bad customers, who are ones who left for some reason, and you should be speaking to them as well to work out who they are and why they left, and why they are essentially the kind of anti-persona. They're the segment that is not quite a good fit for right now. And then you can make a business decision later whether or not you want to, make some changes to make it a good fit later, but probably better to focus on the ones who are a good fit right now. And so you should, as a founder, be able to answer that question, especially if you have paying customers and you're a year in to, and there's a full cycle of renewals.
Well, it's not even just the founder or the startup, right? This is good for any CMO, any chief revenue officer, anybody who's in a big company is trying to push a new initiative, right? Being able to articulate exactly who your customer is, and even creating, whether it's advertising campaigns or pitching an invest, like the same thing is true. We tell people this to say all the time. Just because you're raising capital doesn't mean everybody with money wants to invest, right? Just because you have a water bottle or you're selling water doesn't mean everybody needs water.
Right.
Yeah, of course we all need water, but there's the people that are going to drink the tap water. There's the people that are going to buy the Costco water. There's the people that are going to buy the Perrier. And then there's the people that are going to have the reverse osmosis machines and systems put in their house so they have the highest quality, most pure water possible, right? There's all these different tiers.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really challenging question for a lot of people to answer. In fact, I find 90% of entrepreneurs and business owners and CMOs don't know their customer inside and out. And I think it's very, very difficult to ascertain that information. It's not just demographics. It's not just, 35 to 45-year-old, single white female that's, has 2 kids and, paying mortgage, right? That's not good enough, right? Now we have to go into psychographics and things like that. So how do you help get to that level of granularity?
And that's it's a really good question, and it's exactly where I wanted you to go. It's amazing how many successful businesses have got a long way without actually fully understanding anything beyond demographics. And then maybe we can come back to the Tesla example now, because if you were to speak to people who've bought Teslas, and maybe the people who've bought a second Tesla, or have, they're showing this massive loyalty to the brand. That what I would do and what I would help my clients to do on many occasions is to start to interview those people and really do a deeper psychological interview of how they got there. Like when did they have the first instinct that they wanted to buy an electrical vehicle rather than a gas vehicle? And then what were the steps they went on? Where were they? What information did they look for? What advice did they get? Who did they speak to? And really getting an understanding of what their motivation was to go electrical. And that's the bigger picture. And then why did they choose to go to Tesla? And then there's probably various reasons for going for Tesla. Some of them might be, Elon. Some of them might be something else, a hatred of the traditional, motoring industry in the USA. There's lots of different motivations. And unfortunately for a company as big as Tesla, with probably such a quite a diverse audience of good customers, that means you've got to do a lot of these interviews. And maybe it needs to be built actually into your sales and support process. It's really just some questions that are added on, so you get a picture as you're handing over the keys. Was this person an Elon fanboy, or was this person a climate hero who just really wants to make a difference through reducing their emissions? Which those, they might be in the same bucket, but they might not be.
Well, and I find, and you're exactly right. And I love hearing this, and we can literally talk for hours about this one topic of, this is customer segmentation. This is buyer personas. This is developing the right buyer persona for the right marketing campaign. And then from there, you go into what channel do we advertise based off of this specific campaign. And there's so much you can unpack there. But what I have found, or I should say, what I have found is that when you find a buyer and you find somebody who's bought, just like you were saying, what's their motivation? Why did they do it? And what I have found to be the most true is that when somebody is buying something that's physical, right? They're buying a course necessarily, they're buying something that's physical. What they're doing is they're trying to express the way they feel on the inside so that people can see that from the outside. And it gives them this viewpoint of who they really are to the rest of the world. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that cars are such a representation of ourselves. It's like a suit. It's like a fashion item almost. And so, I don't know whether BMW drivers have a reputation in the US like they do in the UK, but when there's some aggressive driving in the UK and it's a BMW driver, then you think, well, those two things go hand in hand.
Yep. My wife drives a BMW and she will freely admit that she does the aggressive driving. Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, absolutely true. And you really can't get to that through surveys. You can only get it through various types of qualitative data gathering, some observation, some interviewing. Eventually, once you will find that there actually probably are only 6 personas or 3 personas. We're actually a bit more predictable than we think. And maybe there is one question you can ask that would, help to put someone in that bucket. But the only way you can get there is to do the contextual, the qualitative discovery to start with. That gives you the buckets. It tells you have to speak to enough people in order to work out what are the 6 buckets of car owners in the electrical car market.
Absolutely. And Yeah, so Ryan Levesque wrote a book a long time ago called Ask, and it was all about this same idea, right? Just ask them. Ask them what makes them tick. Ask them why they bought this. Ask them why they did this. And don't ask them yes, no questions, right? If you start asking yes, no questions, then again, you're using your confirmation bias to get them to a certain place versus, like you said, so when did you first start thinking about buying an electric vehicle? What was it? I mean, for all we know, it could be the fact that they had a diesel truck before and they're getting tired of paying the gas prices. They're like, this is ridiculous. And I don't need this anymore. And I'm so sick and tired of that. And that can become its own, buyer persona. It's like, hey, we're going to save you money, right? In the long run. Then you could have the other person that's like, well, I had an older car and these things just look really cool. And, I'm really techie and everything else in my life is really techie. And, I just have this old beat up car. And in the Tesla was finally at the price when I could afford it. That's the kind of thing I wanted. Right. And I guarantee there's people on both ends of those spectrums. There's people that still hate Elon Musk that also buy Teslas, right? Because they like the product. And then there's the people that could care less about the environment, but they love Elon Musk and they're going to go buy their Cybertruck or whatever, there's all these different people, but like you said, it's all qualitative research, but there's qualitative and there's quantitative. So first off, can you give us the distinction between those two? And then why would you choose one over the other?
Yeah. So qualitative is usually when you are engaging with a smaller number of customers, just because of it's impractical to go to speak at the depth that you need to speak to hundreds of them. And also your intention is not to create statistically significant data. Your intention is to get that depth, to uncover these hidden things, to ask why, to follow up on things. Sometimes qualitative even involves going into people's houses, their garage. You can see so much from the other things, the other possessions they have. Is this person a flashy person? Is this does this person express themselves in other ways that are similar, have similar values to our brand?
I just want to pause you real quick there because one of my business partners, Bert Dolman, was doing a campaign and he ended up launching with Tommy Hilfiger, one of the largest celebrity fashion deals of all time, worth about $3.5 billion when they did this. And he said that he jokes because I spent a week in Jennifer Lopez's closet because I couldn't find my way out because I needed to do the research, right? He goes, yeah, and her closet's bigger than most people's houses. But again, even at the biggest level, at the highest level, you've got to do your research for sure.
Yeah. And then quantitative is, I think surveys are probably the most famous type of quantitative, but also things like analytics from your website, any kind of open rates, things like that in your emails that you should be tracking. And there are both of them, there's no right or wrong. The qualitative one is good for uncovering things that you don't know about. It's good for having the opportunity to follow up on what you see and being a bit more open. But once you've done a bunch of qualitative interviews, you probably have started to see some themes. Maybe you think, okay, there's one category of people are very climate focused. One category of people is more about some kind of display of something, external display. Another one is saving money. But we don't know how many of them exist in the USA or in the world. So quantitative is essential as a follow-up to that to work out what's the kind of the addressable market. And let's say if we didn't have enormous marketing budget and kind of Elon Musk's deep pockets, and we had to just choose one of those groups to start with because we think it's the most promising group, where are we going to direct our money? We need to know that there's enough of them and that we're able to reach them. And so that would be when you do some kind of quantitative survey that looks across the car buying population of the USA, asks them some questions about what they bought before, and then asks them one or two questions that you think really get to the core of whether they are one of these, whether they're price-centric or eco-centric or whatever. And then that helps you to give you some confidence that, yes, we think that 1/3 of the car buying population fits this category, and therefore that's who we're going to go after first, and we're going to channel all of our marketing and maybe even product development towards that audience.
I love that. Again, we could talk so much about this and how do you create just an amazing campaign that's going to scale a company? And you just hit on something that's, I think, really, really important, which is you kind of start with qualitative first, so you have a basic understanding, if I'm reading this right. And now we didn't get just one buyer persona, we got 5. Okay, that's great, but we don't have the budget to go after all 5, nor do we know how big each market is. So the next step would be, well, can we quantify how big each one of these markets are? That's also really important, because we might say, okay, out of these 5 buyer personas, segment number 4 has the biggest addressable market, but, and I think we would take this another step further, and this is where you get into, early stage startup market, which is who are the early adopters. Maybe segment 1 is the one that's most likely to buy, but they're also the smallest segment. And this is where you would then say, I'm assuming, take that quantitative and qualitative and put it together and develop a persona with a marketing team to say, these are the people we're going after initially. Not to say that we're ignoring everybody else, right? It's just that we don't have the budget to go after everybody else. So let's focus only on these people for right now. And this, I think, is the biggest downfall of most entrepreneurs and business owners. They want earlier, which is serve everyone, because they feel like everyone could benefit. And that's not the point of marketing, advertising, raising capital. It's not to do that. It's to serve one customer really, really well at first, so that you can get the resources to serve the rest of them. Would you agree with that?
Completely. I think an analogy that I often think about is stepping stones, in that you're just because you're focusing on one segment doesn't mean that you're ruling out other segments in the future. It's just a stepping stone. It just gives you like you said, it could be early adopters, which means you can start to get data, you can start to get case studies, you can start to get referrals, you can be testing out the features on people who are less likely to leave because they're more loyal. There's lots of reasons to go after that market, even if it's not the biggest one. And then meanwhile, it buys you time, gives you some revenue, gives you something to work with, so that when you go after that, more desirable, maybe larger, richer, or whatever it is segment, but that's harder to reach, you've got so much more to work with as a starting point, so that when they join, they can see 150 positive reviews, or they can see case studies, and you've ironed out all of your usability issues, so they are less likely to churn, and they're more likely to stick around.
This has been awesome, Andrew. And again, I'd love to just talk about this stuff for a long time, because I feel like it's overwhelming for a lot of people. Like, let's be honest, if you're an early stage company, or you're going out there trying to raise money just so you can get, a marketing budget put together, then this is really overwhelming when you start thinking about all the steps, which is exactly why people like you exist, right? Help them walk through that process. So I'd love for you to tell people, how can they find out more about you? Where can they find you online and get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's been great talking to you. And I love this stuff. So I could also talk for hours and hours more on about it. There's 2 places where people can find me. One is Elios, which is this community for researchers. So that's a good place if you want to talk about research. It's evolving. We didn't talk about AI. There's lots of technological evolution happening there. So that's a good place to learn about that. And then my own consultancy is Muir Wood & Co. And I work a lot with founders and startups, everything from full service research down to just more like coaching and helping them to do the research themselves, which is actually, getting that firsthand contact with customers is super important. So sometimes it's just about giving them the confidence to do their own interviews.
Beautiful. And we'll make sure we put all of that information in the show notes. So if you're out there watching this, listening to this, then make sure you go check out the show notes so you can get all of Andrew's contact information, find him online, and learn a little bit more about his company. And I am really excited about, probably having you back on to go a little bit deeper into this, Andrew, at some point, because the topic of market segmentation and scaling up companies and how do you do this effectively, like, it's a really, really big topic. And I feel like most people don't spend enough time on it. And it's also why, again, the statistics of 80 to 90% of small businesses fail in the first 10 years. They just don't understand that piece. But like I said, once you figure it out and you know how to run a business, like, there's also, you have to have a good product and have the operational fortitude. Of course, we know that. But once you find that market and you can go after it, the sky is the limit, right? So,
absolutely.
Andrew, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Absolutely. And so you've been watching or listening to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions here at Angel Investors Network. Thanks so much for being here. And as always, like, subscribe, and share. Take care.